Okay, this is Highway Through Health. We're not a crisis line. We are not a therapy show, and we are not licensed healthcare providers. What we are is a place where lived experience is taken seriously because too many people have discovered the more clearly they speak, the worse they're treated. We share personal experience not to give medical advice, but so that when people encounter the kinds of situations we discuss, they're ready to recognize patterns and respond effectively. So the show is about language, power, and what happens when systems stop listening and start translating people into problems. So if you've ever felt mislabeled, misheard, or punished for staying coherent under pressure, you're in the right place. So I think I got through it that time.
That was good.
It'll be more, usually I'm a lot more spontaneous, but for whatever reason. So I don't know. I think at this point, it's up to you. You want to interview me or you want to go the other way and I can ask you questions?
We can probably trade off.
All
And
right.
each of us kind of have our, kind of play off what the other has experienced because we've certainly had some similar unfortunate experiences, I guess you might want to say.
Absolutely. That sounds good to me. So
Okay.
let me start off then. I'll ask you just, when institutions are defining you, how do you tend to identify yourself?
Okay, that's a good question because even as I was unable to walk when I was in literally crippling pain, in addition to having the lupus and heart problems, I still wasn't defining myself. Although at that point I had already been mislabeled with psychiatric slurs and had come off the drugs and had already, pursued going to school and other things. But even when I was at my worst with the physical pain and dealing with the things I was dealing with, um, I still was very much a creative person, always trying to do something and make the best of life in situations. So that included being creative. That included baking. I loved baking. Um, I, used to talk, I read extensively. I used to talk with Sandy, who raises my cousin.
Mm,
And we were very close. Um, and, when I thought I could trust my ex and other things, we, at a point, we were both enjoying to do writing and things. I was encouraged to kind of share my love of music and what my experiences have been and having that get me through a lot of trauma and things that, such as that. I did, I made jewelry, just a
wow.
variety of things. So I was not ever one to define myself by my limitations, including my neurodivergence. It's just, I always try to look at what benefits and positives that things bring, including the experiences of trauma.
Right.
Um, so it's more about defining myself by my gifts and my skills as opposed to any limitations that I might have, while still acknowledging that certain things are a little bit beyond my ability, or
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When we get all that stuff. So then really, I kind of feel the same way. There's a lot of energy and motion. I feel like if we can't put our energy into motion, that's where the healing stops. And
Yes.
I can't just sit around and do absolutely nothing. That's why I went off and did farm work when I did, at the
Yeah.
point when my body was completely dissolving, all my connective tissue was dissolving, and it looked like all the treatments had failed and there was nothing left. So then it was just, okay, energy into motion, here we go, no matter
Yes.
what. So I know, so really, you're like me. Most of your day then is spent staying grounded and staying focused and moving forward in spite of your limitations.
Oh, right. And for me too, I mean, having had, several near death experiences, but also just knowing what I do understand now about how certain things were misused, including past life regression hypnotherapy. I've also spent a lot of time sort of backtracking and saying, okay, I'm very grateful because I'm no longer in literally crippling physical pain. I can walk without crutches, walk without assistance. I can sit comfortably. I sleep now. So all of these things, it's like, well, how can I then sort of, better educate myself as far as what happened? Because if other people were going to reverse engineer or try and define my experience in a negative connotation in order to profiteer, then allow me to do that so that I can literally help other people
Right.
and pull this into something positive. So hence, that's given me the gift of activism and finding out certain things I would have, it was painful to find out. Other things that it made me more aware, I suppose, of a widespread or possibly underground misuse of what are really treatment modalities that are meant to heal and transform people's lives. So to be able to put that into perspective,
Right.
um, not only for myself, but to help build a business on that and to help other people find that within themselves and to try and direct people to some of the right books and be very open about my spiritual experiences because I think they're important and I think they can be translated into a more universal and helpful thing. Nobody should ever have to be um, slammed for having or mislabeled or slurred for healing, for getting better. That should be celebrated, not attempted to be sabotaged.
I completely agree. I think, when I had my death experience and I was alive when it happened, just like you were, people think, how does that happen? Well, it can happen. It does happen. And the reason more people don't know about it is because we can't talk about it, because the minute we open our mouths, then we get stigmatized and kidnapped, and a number of other things can happen
Yeah.
to us just because of the way the system's structured today, which is another very good reason why we're starting this show, is to help people understand these types of things. Do you remember when maybe the first time was when you were saying one thing and professionals were listening and hearing something different?
I think for me, I was considering a lot of this, in retrospect, in preparation for our program today. It really had to do, even when I was dealing with the crippling physical pain, they kept wanting to shunt that over and deny me any kind of treatment for that, to force, now I understand it's to force a false narrative into psychiatry.
Right.
um I didn't get that at the time, and you don't ever want to suspect that people you're turning to for help have ulterior motives that aren't of a positive sort. um so there was certainly that, because at first the people I was working with, when I had come off, I was being carpet bombed with drugs initially. And that was from having what was a nervous breakdown. I was working 80-hour weeks, taking care of an ill adopted mother. She had more than her fair share of health problems, trauma, a lot of unresolved trauma that contributed to her behavior. And a lot of drugs that were affecting her in a very negative way, which, I'm not surprised learning what I've learned, since. But it has been a journey of finding out that when you do complain about trauma or when you do mention that there is criminal activity or corruption within particular systems, that will very quickly be mislabeled, particularly if you have already carried some type of diagnosis, even when it was inaccurate. And you find yourself a bit hamstrung. And that's unfortunately, again, when I'm finding out, particularly as I was starting to get better, people seemed to be bound and determined to make me worse. And especially the more I spoke up about the deleterious effects of those drugs,
Right.
you
Yeah, I
know.
think so. People probably don't understand what people like in your and I's position have to deal with a lot. We're not talking, when we talk about spirituality, we're not talking about mythology. We're not talking about way out there beliefs. We're talking about things that we do pretty much from the minute we get up until the minute we go to bed, because we're confronted with what we're confronted with illness wise.
Yes.
the minute we wake up. I know my eyes are going, I know my feet hurt and my hands are crippled, and so then you say, okay, what are we going to do now? And it's really about confronting that without being a victim and not being helpless. So these aren't, although we have to use the same language that other people use to describe their spirituality, what we're talking about is a very integrative approach to life, really, where we're just confronting our obstacles on a 24/7 basis, really.
Yes. Yeah. And it is a daily thing. The more I've incorporated, I've been a lifelong person that like really digs into like comparative religion and looks at the historical perspectives and all that as well. And I knew, and like I like to try and explain to people, for me, and as a woman, we don't see enough about the women in the New Testament. We don't see enough about Mother
Right.
Mary. We don't see what Mary Magdalene's experience was. We see about the men. We see about the apostles, and that's great. But Jesus was there to show people how to do things, how to have your own experience in life, pick up, meet those challenges, or as Job did in the Old Testament, or as you see with Esther and a lot of the women that you do see in the Old Testament. How do you meet those challenges with the same grace that Jesus showed in the face of knowing that he was going to die, as we all know this? But how do we pick up our own cross
Right.
and continue on that journey through in an experiential way?
Completely agree.
And we're meant to do that each as individuals. So I've looked into the Gnostic Gospels, and I've looked into a lot of other things that kind of were able to add to that, things that I know historically had been cut out of the Bible for purposes of people misusing certain knowledge and trying to maintain a false sense of control over everyone's experience of the Holy Spirit.
Right. Yeah, I get that. Most of my work today, what I'm focused on the Lupus Project going forward, is showing people that there are enough scraps in there left of what they are. You just have to take a little bit more literally than what you probably are now, and you'll be amazed at the results that come out of it. Going back to when you start using spiritual language about professionals, what happened to you then? What kind of labels did you get?
Well, and I would think this might happen to people even without the misuse of past life regression hypnotherapy and certain experience I had that were very much on the extreme end of things. People wanted to pathologize. They wished to use coercive control, mischaracterize me, mischaracterize my experiences. They wanted to hide abusive criminal behavior that they themselves were knowingly indulging in, and certain illicit sorts of studies and other things that had been happening, and that is really unfortunate. But I do find that much like with your experiences, and as I'm discovering experiences that other people have had, they like to they like to use the mental illness slurs, and they know these are false at this point, just to mischaracterize people's healing, to mischaracterize and undercut their own experiences, because they really want to keep people dependent and traumatized, and
Keep them going.
disempowered.
Repeat customers going through the
Yes.
system over and over and over again.
Right.
Yeah, that I was called hyper religious in court, told I had a ridiculous vision of the cross. I mean, it was a direct attack on belief done under oath in a courtroom, but we'll get to that as we go on. But I had similar experiences. You can't talk about it. Suddenly, when you realize that, to me, what I've been going through is a process that led to a living death experience. And to communicate how that process works, you have to use language that is biblical, but also has a lot more timber to it than most people tend to think. And so when you start doing that, all of a sudden, oh no, you're hyper this, hyper that, the slurs are endless, and it just never really seemed to quit. So it really wasn't until I left Michigan and moved down to North Carolina that I could really get away from that. Because once they do that and pathologize you through the medical community, it just follows you around. And
Right.
at that point, it's impossible to have a legitimate conversation with a medical professional.
Yeah. I had found that out too, and that has to do a lot with the corrupt corporate takeover of things. Not that things were perfect prior, but we've really seen an influx of that happening. I had, because they really wanted to deny. Maryland is, it's problematic for a number of reasons, including the fact that they set rates. That's where Social Security is based. There's a number of research hospitals, that have supposed prestige. Uh,
Right,
and they're going to find out they have no reason to exist. So I think that's kind of how some of that became very twisted. Certainly around my case, my personal experience. But yeah, there is a real it's a problem. I did have a good doctor, a good primary care doctor. He was wonderful. He understood where I was coming from. I said, listen, I want to be able to use nutrition, natural means of doing this. He was my medical marijuana provider when they started offering that in Maryland. And he understood where I was coming from, what my goals were, that I wanted to return to health. I wanted to return to work. I wanted to be able to move on with my life. Period. It was imperative to me, and I didn't want opiates anyway. And I'm
right,
really glad at this point that as much pain as I was in, I kind of compare it to childbirth in some ways. But I mean, I had what they thought was cancer on my leg and all kinds of things that happened due to my pain not being treated and, not really being able to be comfortable or walk correctly.
right,
Um, and it, to me, like I remember having the terrible pain. I didn't let it define me when I was in it. It limited me, but I didn't allow it to define me. And every day I wake up and I'm grateful for that. And I make sure that I, exercise and I do my nutrition and I do other things.
right,
But I am grateful to Dr. Odie for having listened to me. He was the only one that had things correct within my medical records. And it's unfortunate that I had that being undercut by a very, very criminal group of people and identity thieves, credit card thieves, etc. I mean, but that's sad. I'm sure this is going to come out in the news in Maryland. Some of it already has. And, if God wanted to use me as a tool to help expose that, then, thank you, God, for allowing me the gift of being able to do something more substantial with my life and my healing than I had necessarily thought was going to happen.
exactly. I've been thinking lately, a lot of people kind of lose sight of the fact that Job apologized when he ran into the whirlwind. So, so the
Yeah,
intensity and the brilliance of these experiences when they happen are so massive and they're so overwhelming. They're literally impossible to describe with words. You literally have to have one of these experiences yourself. So basically, and I feel the same way. If we can help highlight this pathway so other people can go and have that experience, because I certainly am not capable. I don't have the vocabulary, don't have the time, probably don't even have the patience to explain the whole thing. Just
yeah,
go experience it yourself and you'll find out. And this is where the religiosity language really gets us. So lack of insight was probably used as a tool to not so
oh
much
yeah,
diagnose anything, but introduce you into the systemic fraud.
yeah, yeah. Anasagosia or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous.
It's it is ridiculous. And
Yeah,
what's scary though is it's so rubber stamped so quickly in courtrooms.
yes,
And
yes,
that's the problem with it. So we
very.
have to be, unfortunately, too careful about how we talk about things right now and the way the system's set up today, that it really doesn't respect religious and spiritual language, not realizing that people are talking literally, not figuratively. We're not, televangelists here. We're doing it kind of the opposite way. So
Right.
I so what
And
kind
I
of escalatory things did you find happening to you when you started standing up for yourself and trying to get out of that kidnap situation?
Um, well, for example, I mean, when I was really confronting my ex about his behavior and how that dovetailed with the misuse of the past life regression hypnotherapy, I was being beaten, and I'd go to say something about this, and they would mischaracterize and go and put in perjurious court orders to have me hospitalized. At one point, it was Valentine's Day of 2022, if I'm not mistaken, because there was at one point where I did actually try to kill myself because there was no escape. The more I
Right.
kept asking people to help me, please, to get out of that apartment, move on with my life, let me take my cat, the one that was left because of all this other stuff that happened. Could you at least help me to find, I didn't care if it was a shelter, I didn't care what it was, and hold him responsible. I said, listen, he's abusive. But no, they kept deliberately mischaracterizing it as me being psychotic, as me having an episode and needing mental health. No, no, not at all. Just because he and the relative that told me knew the police, that's no excuse. I'm
Right.
sorry. Especially when I had my face beaten so badly, both my cheeks nearly broken, two black eyes, lips split, and there I am at Hopkins, and they deliberately mischaracterized it, would not allow and would not take a report. And he, claiming, oh, she was out looking for drugs. No, I wasn't looking for drugs. I was looking for an escape route.
Wow.
And the only things that I had in my system were prescribed. And people knew what he was and knew he was a criminal, knew he was hired to eliminate me, that deed theft and property theft and other things and identity theft and fraud had already happened. But Hopkins has been involved with some illicit consciousness studies, and they've been in trouble for it before. Um, again, there's going to be a lot of news that will probably be coming out regarding this, and I just want to make it very clear: I'm an extremely peaceful person. He's the
Right.
one that was grabbing the knife. He's the one that was making false police reports. He's the one that's not even technically a citizen. His
Wow.
paperwork is sus at best. So I have no malice toward anyone. My whole bag is that I just want things exposed so that the people who are knowingly and intentionally doing wrong are held to account, and I'm able to live my life and move on peaceably.
Right.
I already lost all my possessions. I'm deeply hurt, obviously, by what happened to me. This was intentional fraud. This was intentional mischaracterization and misrepresentation. This was people leaving me literally in a nightmare in hell
Right.
for well over 5 years with a known domestic abuser. And they knew this and they just wanted to call it research. No, I'm sorry. That is not okay. That's human experimentation, is what that is.
Yeah,
And
that
that's
was
not
way,
okay. Yeah.
way overboard. And I think that's one of the things we need to alert people to as much as we can is what happens once that label gets applied. It never goes away. If you go to court, it carries more weight than a felony conviction. It's not
Yeah.
based on any evidence whatsoever. Most of it comes out of eugenics, and
Yes, very much.
there's a lot of people, excuse me, making a whole lot of money that off of that by just throwing around a few buzzwords and oh
Yeah.
well when it comes to you, right? So
Right. Right. Yeah. It's about protecting crooks and criminals in a very crooked system. It really protects abusers. Um, it's a crock. It is what it is. It's based upon things they know are not factual. They know that chemical imbalance is a marketing lie.
yeah,
And they know that these are eugenics drugs, that these are, in fact, the exact same chemical compounds given to people in other countries specifically to induce akathisia, specifically to induce torture. These are the same drugs that came out of Nazi Germany. These were either developed or further or made further in the concentration camps and tested. So these are the exact same chemicals and their derivatives.
that,
And a lot of people just don't have that awareness of what exactly is going on. And it was psychiatrists too there that were in charge of the concentration camps and selection. And unfortunately, we're seeing very much a direct lineage of that going on today.
Yeah, my feeling is we don't need ideology in medicine. We
No,
really
not
don't.
at all. Not at
And
all.
that's what we're sitting with right now. But
Yes.
and for people like us, we'll move on to the lesson of the day. And some people talk about the fear of death, but what we're talking about is the death of fear.
Right.
We get rid of it. And when you deal with the kind of pain that we deal with, we've already gone through our end of life stuff. I'm sure your medical directives are much like mine. DNR, if something goes wrong, let me go. If I can't feed myself, let me starve to death.
Yes.
You get ready for all that. You've faced all that, and you know that that could happen to you. It could be a very realistic outcome, and there may have to come a day when you say, "Get that food away from me. I'm done with this." So, and you really you can't have residual fears. And so what I found was in getting rid of fears, it also got rid of victimhood. It opened the door to a ton of stability. I did not sit around whining about the situation I was in. It turned into you know what, you're going to kill me, come get me. And
That's how I was.
get
Yep.
up and, and just
Yep.
throw your weight into the day and see what happens. And I don't really believe that people understand how much that starts to solidify as a mental attitude, a spiritual mental attitude that just you get up and go. You don't worry about it. I mean,
Yeah.
you take precautions, obviously. I didn't go out and do really stupid stuff. I was cautious about what I was doing. I didn't want to have a tree fall on me in the woods and lay there for 5 days while I died. That wasn't
Right.
something I wanted to have happen. So I was paying attention, but it was definitely an exorcism of fear. Did you experience something similar?
Well, right. Because I kept trying to escape the household I was in, but they seemed determined. I was literally trapped with that man. Um, I was literally being forced to stay with my ex, and I knew he wasn't going to change. And finally one day I said, I have to get the hell out of here. And of
Mm,
course he made it, well, she's having an episode. Oh, here comes the Uber to come pick her up and take her to MedStar.
great.
uh and I said, listen, I'm not taking your drugs this time around. This is enough. I've had enough. He's an abusive person. I'm just, stop it with the risperidone. Stop it with this crap. I'm so over this.
Right.
And they kept trying to get me to sign papers. I said, fuck you. No, whatever's going to happen. Well, they're taking you back to him. All right, well, then at least I've proven that I don't need to take the drugs. But as soon as I got in there, he picked up a knife and said, I'm going to motherfucking kill you, you fucking cunt. And somehow here come the cops showing up. And I'm like, they're dragging, and he, spit on me or whatever it was he did at that point. Because that's happened before too. I knew, I mean, I would catch him looking at me with just the worst looks of hatred and contempt on his face. And I didn't want to stay there. It's just that nobody was helping facilitate my leaving, and I didn't like that. They were painting false narratives and everything, and it just was horrific. So when I
So,
did finally get released that time from Shepherd Pratt, which I didn't need to be in there, and they were like, "Well, we're shipping you down to DC." To the homeless shelter. I said, well, do what you got to do then. I just don't care.
right,
And I was blessed enough to be able to run into different people, and like I say, you will find God at work through different people. And you have to be able to have that faith. You have to take that walk of faith.
right,
And thankfully, I found myself where I am now. I mean, yes, I am facing a challenge with housing, but this is something that we're finding these mischaracterizations of people who don't have enough income, senior citizens, other people who have been victims of the corporate takeover of land ownership.
right.
Um, and simply not, wages not keeping a pace, and jobs not being plentiful. And it has really hit the DMV very hard. But I'm working with somebody who's just been a real blessing in my life, and I've met some really amazing people here.
That's
Um, Yeah, and I don't, and I take every experience as something that's a plus. I've had the opportunity to have people, in my life that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And it's been like very much like a mutual being able to say, look how much we all have in common.
Right,
God bless all of us. We are all moving past something and dealing with something that is larger than us, but look at how we're all coming together to learn from one another,
right.
and make the best of a really, bad situation. People are in here for, for different things. It's a lot of people who are escaping domestic violence. I think I'm the only neurodivergent person here, but and I'm the only one. No, I'm not even the only one from Baltimore, to tell you the truth. I met somebody really cool that ended up here from Baltimore. So, and we actually happen to be from the same place, used to shop at the same mall. So you
That's
never
fantastic.
know sometimes who you may
Yeah.
run into. Um, but yeah, I don't have any fear. I mean, but I am somebody, neurodivergent. You want routine, routine, routine. And of course,
Mhm.
I've not ever wanted to be homeless, and have always done everything to try and avoid that. I always paid my bills diligently, had pristine credit. And that's what
Yeah.
made me attractive to people
Yeah.
who were
Right.
criminal minded, you
Yeah.
know.
And once that label is applied, it just never goes away.
No, and I think that's why we have to really form a group of us as a coalition of people who understand, and who are speaking up about this, because I think it's going to end up sort of being like the modern day Underground Railroad in many ways. And I don't see anything wrong with that, to be honest. I think that those of us who are able to help one another, each one teach one, as the saying goes,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think that's where it's going to have to be, and take our own power back, take our own narratives back, and have that sort of spread out like ripples in a pond. Um,
Absolutely. The
and
more
do
we
it that
talk,
way.
the more we can help empower others, then the more they can, walk that journey. And yeah, I think if we can just explain to people that there is a destination in every journey, and if you haven't found it yet, when you find it, it's gonna knock you off your feet. It's like getting hit by lightning. It'll knock you into next week. And if you're not kind of prepared for those kinds of emotions, it will throw you off, and you will talk funny to other people who are not experiencing what's going on. But what's really going on is this massive realignment that's going on that takes fear completely out of your life. You quit worrying about that. So when fear goes away and you're forgiven, the Holy Spirit's there, you're using that, you're integrating it, shame goes away. Next thing you know, your emotional stability starts rising. And so the suffering part and how it relates to biblical practices, I think, is another thing I'm looking forward to help it unpack with people,
Yeah.
for people with you, because I think our experiences, it, I don't know about you, but my feeling was when I was out on that farm and my feet were all swollen and I couldn't make it, every day was inspirational. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was going to see the next sunrise, but I did not lack for inspiration whatsoever. For pretty much
Yeah.
from the moment I got up to the moment I went to bed. I wasn't getting depressed, wasn't getting bummed out. I was just, making the best of it. Come get me. I'm going to give it all I got today. And again, that's another thing that becomes a constant companion. It's an attitude, and you feel that with you all the time. And so again, as we talk about spirituality and things of that nature, these are very real, very tangible emotions that we use on a daily basis to get through what we have to get through.
Oh yeah.
So
Absolutely.
when the Bible says don't fear, we get it. We don't. So
Right.
now the next step is not I'm hyper religious or I'm manic or I have some other, I'm schizophrenic. I think I've been accused
Yeah.
of everything by that group of people there in Grand Rapids, but it never ended. But that's not what it
Yeah.
is at all.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's actually more about how do I be more present in my life? How am I now more grounded? How am I now connecting and respecting that mind body connection? How am I now respecting that God is present in every part of my body, even the parts that hurt? And how am I now able to best utilize this and be able to translate this well enough and help other people with it? Because God doesn't put us through anything without there being some sort of reason behind it. And it certainly isn't to be suffering at the hands of Hopkins or Pine Rest.
Absolutely.
That's just, it really it makes you very much more aware of the practicality of a lot of things in the Bible, a lot of things in the stories that were told, why those were included, how this actually ties into with a lot of different religious aspects, and historical happenings. It is very much you have to question, why are these people in charge of psychiatry trying to knock out people's modern day experiences of God? Because the Bible is supposed to be a living document. We are all parts of God. We are all part of that greater whole. We're all part of the source. Why, and you have to see that it is a profiteering motive. For those people, that they don't want there to be that religious experience. They don't want people to realize we are all interconnected. They don't want people having those insights about love, about forgiveness, about taking each experience and moving on, about realizing that we are each an eternal energy having a temporary human experience.
Right.
That really, because that realization and that realization of closeness, and that realization of rising above what you have experienced and not engaging in negative vibration, not engaging in lower behavior, that is to their detriment. They're not going to profit anymore, because that means we have taken our own power back, and we're not there to be combative. We're not there to be negatory. We're there to have a wider, a bit of wisdom, a more substantial healing in mind, body, and spirit, and to be the modern day prophets, the modern day experiencers that we do see documented in the Bible.
Right.
And they have no right to try and erase that from us, particularly those who are purporting to be Christian and purporting to support Jesus. At a point, like we've said before, it becomes amoral and satanic, and
It does.
that's a choice that they're making. I mean, that's a deliberate choice that they're making.
And it's a choice that's also being institutionalized in the educational system. It's being institutionalized in licensing. It's institutionalized in university classrooms. This didn't happen by accident. It happened over a number of years. And the people that are doing it today don't think, for whatever reason, I don't know why they don't give it a second thought when it comes to coercive approaches, coercive labeling, demeaning labeling, putting people through humiliation rituals to get you to comply to a medication regimen that you don't need, don't want, and it's affecting you negatively. But it makes them money, so they're going to ignore it and keep you on it anyway. That kind of thing.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's about disempowerment. It's about them wanting a false control. It's about them wanting to promote a particular narrative, a very false narrative, but one that's quite lucrative for those who are supporting and sustaining it. And that is just the opposite of healing. That is very detrimental to people, and they know this. They know that it's a psychological warfare. They know what they're doing is tantamount to torture, and it is torture. And they know this, and these are things that have been used as torture techniques. They've studied them for those purposes, and the drugs as well, like we had mentioned. So at this point, it really is about just making people aware of that. And I do see that awareness more and more coming to the forefront. I am very heartbroken over Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle's murders.
Right.
But I do think that much like the unfortunate assassination of the man that was in charge of United Health, I believe, what I had been hoping is this will help spark a larger conversation about things that surrounded this, about the
Right.
circumstances and situations surrounding it, because we have needed to have that for a long time. The whole insanity thing, much like what we saw with the shooter at the movie theater many years past now,
Yeah.
it is not sensible. Why are you actually having someone take drugs that we already know, although big pharma has tried to keep it quiet, that they cause suicidal ideation and some people cause homicidal behavior. This is not sensible. It's not logical.
No.
And a lot of this could have been avoided had that information been out there, had people chosen not to promote a false chemical imbalance narrative and really begun to deal with situations at hand. This stuff comes out of trauma. We shouldn't ever be drugging children. That's my mind is blown by that. And I know that's been how we've had exponentially these large increases in mass shootings, period. But
Right.
particularly in schools, these children are not allowed to develop their brains. So we've really seen this inversion, the whole mental illness on the rise. Well, it's like, well, did you people ever think you're causing it? Did you
They
ever
are.
think that perhaps the way you're trying to frame certain things and frame particular events is actually causing this? It is what you are trying to avoid the conversation about the causation,
Right.
and place a lot of false narratives and just phony baloney beliefs around it, and instead of being able to say, we need to be more flexible in our understanding. We need to have more mindfulness. We need to have people taking responsibility and accountability, apologizing when necessary, learning from mistakes, putting energy in toward being creative, putting energy towards understanding and nurturing and appreciating the connection that we all have as fellow human beings and to nature and to the creatures
Yeah.
around us, to spirituality and the God of your own understanding, realizing, through comparative religion, how much these things have in common. The
Hmm.
miracle of life itself, the miracle of how did each place have their own sort of understanding of God, of creation, and have everything be so similar. And
Right.
nobody even, being able to communicate. And you can take that back to the book of Genesis and certain things within that about how you had the Tower of Babel and people were playing God at that point, and God had to stop that by creating, multiple languages.
Yeah.
They were forgetting they were just a piece of God. They were not God himself. And we now have a lot of things like Greg Braden does a wonderful job of breaking down a lot of things where the science meets the spiritual. Dr. Joe Dispenza, same thing. He's been able to have these cures with cancer. You have the folks who were doing cancer treatments with sonic and vibration and removing tumors and ablating the tumors with sound. So, and med beds, vibrational
Right.
healing. A lot of these things are now becoming much more widely known and available. And that's part of what my drive is to help make people aware of this and have these as first line treatments, have these things much more widely available, have the evidence out there as an availability, and allow people to return to that. I
Right.
think that's imperative. People don't want to go the route of all this, the excessive chemicals, and particularly when I think about cancer.
Oh.
Just the chemo is just so toxic and it's horrible, and the after effects are just devastating on people. And to be able to have the options out there, have the
Right.
knowledge out there that these drugs are harmful, they're neurotoxins, they help nothing, they create a lot of problems. It's how I lost my teeth.
Yeah.
um People get kidney issues from lupus, or from being forced to take lithium. I had that happen to me.
Right.
um this is not there, nothing good ever comes out of this whole narrative that they try to push and promote with neurotoxic poisoning. It's just
I,
not good.
I
And
agree. And then what really disturbs me too is how really eugenics has entered into the courtroom scenario
yeah, yeah,
where, all it takes is a little bit of a slur that has no evidence whatsoever. Your civil rights are gone. And
yeah,
the fact that if you use religious language and you lose your civil rights over religious language, that opens a whole new, ball of problems
yeah,
that
it does.
nobody seems to be interested in even addressing. It's like we want to keep this control structure in place, let it do what it wants to people, and have it focus on spirituality and religion as a symptom, not
Yeah.
as a cure. We so hopefully that leaves helps people understand our position, how things get difficult for us. You can imagine just going to a regular doctor's appointment. I usually don't bring it up. I don't bring the topic up. I
Yeah.
try to keep everything as quiet as, get me in and get me out. I'm not here to cause trouble. There's a couple things I need. One of them, I take Tylenol with codeine. That's my last painkiller,
Yeah.
and I'm down to two drugs, that and cyclosporin. And one time
Wow.
6 or 7.
Great.
So yeah, I'm making progress in that regard. But I would like to have a place where I can explain this is more of a process, because I think you and I both and the other people in our position could be more helpful and more peer related activities. But I'm not going to go and start to get into a peer related activity while having to fight the bigotry of a profession that wants to ridicule and denigrate spiritual experience. I'm not going to do that. So when we'll either get respected or we'll do it on our own.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
one way
I'm
or
on the
another.
do it on our own tip at this point. I'm in the best physical and mental health of my life. So but regardless of the heart issues, because I've even heard that that even those can be more addressed, and I would totally agree with this. Um, just with that mind body connection.
Right.
So I think being able to at some point either I say I'm studying QHHT myself. I'd like to be a practitioner. And having said that, I mean, there's ample people now who are really being turned on to that. I'm looking forward to combining both, you know, uh, Soul Speak by Julia Cannon, which is Dolores Cannon's daughter. Dolores
Oh,
Cannon
good.
basically pioneered that. Soul Speak is something that kind of teaches within that mind body connection too. So for me, I want to be able to combine that and a program of holistic health, uh, and with the hopes of being able to, not only help people deprescribe, but build a system that supports and maintains growth, health, and that's for both neurodivergent and neurotypical populations. I mean, this is really something that goes, across the board to be able to help people attain, and maintain their health themselves, nutrition wise.
Absolutely.
The ketogenic diet has literally helped work wonders for me. Um, uh, and it's easy to do. It's not hard. I wish I had a notebook like this thick of
Mhm.
information about different herbs and the properties of different strains of medical marijuana, how that all corresponded just to straight up nutrition, like different herbs, vegetables, fruits. And I thought, well, even if you adjust just your nutrition, then the less anything else you might need, whether it's medical marijuana or anything else. Where does the spices come in? Ginger, garlic, all this. And that's one thing I really wish I still had my notebook, but it's not that I don't remember some of it.
Right. Right.
I know certainly what works, what's been helpful. I've really gotten to the point where, finally being away from all those toxic people, that toxic situation, all of it, just to be able to have my nervous system calm down enough to be able to reconnect and re-energize with my intuition,
Yeah.
and listening to my body, and being able to have that connection and really be fully connected and fully present, and learn to just adjust over being away from that, because that's
Absolutely.
you
Yep.
know huge. It's been a huge help. I mean, that's the biggest help that I could have, is being away from all that and knowing that I don't ever have to experience it again.
Exactly.
And knowing that God is with me. I mean, I wouldn't have survived so many death and near death experiences, excuse me, had God not wanted me back in this body. So now it's a matter of, okay, how do I best celebrate that? How do I best bring this information to other people? How do I best utilize that? Not just for my own sense of gratitude, but to be able to do something that helps the world, because it must be for a purpose. I'm still on the side of the dirt.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, I'd be gone.
Feel exactly the same way.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on about an hour. This has been great. Any
Yeah.
closing things you want to mention?
I am very grateful, and I had actually mentioned this when I made the video for my friend Phil's channel on NDEs. I think that's called Not the End NDEs, a YouTube channel.
Okay.
Uh, and one of the things certainly that was getting me through a lot of that kind of pain and the seizures when I was having those and everything else, I did something called Philosophy Fridays with my friend Jay. And just to be able to have that, even that connection via Twitter, and being able to like live tweet Simpsons and
Mm-hmm.
late night comedy shows, and doing all that, and really
Yep.
being able to connect with like the different writers and creators and stuff was really honestly, that was the one connecting fiber, I think, between
Mm-hmm.
point A and point B for me. So I'm just super grateful. Jay is a really cool guy, and
Awesome.
just one of my favorite people.
Great.
So I'm just say thank you to him because he's amazing.
That's great. So things are looking up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll keep this going. This is Highway Through Health. This is now, hopefully you get a feel for what it is we're trying to accomplish, trying to do. We're not here to trash the system. There are good people in the system,
Yeah.
but the system is very exploitive. It's become a problem. It's become a major problem, and it's a problem that we don't want in our lives anymore. So this is why we're doing this. And well, hopefully we can help other people learn what we've learned the hard way so they don't have to suffer through what we've had to suffer through to get there.
Amen.
All right. Well, then I guess I'll see you next week then. Thank you very much, Dana. It's been wonderful.
All righty. Thank you, Michael. Always a pleasure, my friend.
Same
God
here.
bless.
See you later.
See you, hon.
Bye.
Bye.